What's up, metal and heavy music fans? These are my picks for the 12 best metal albums of October. First up, we have Full of Hell with Garden of Burning Apparitions via Relapse Records. Blink and you'll miss it with this one, clocking in at just 21 minutes. It starts strong with the balls-to-the-wall grind of Gilded Blight and raging D-beat of Asphyxiant Blessing. And am I crazy, or was that a slide whistle? Other tracks like Murmuring Foul Spring and All Bells Ringing get even more chaotic with the random blasts of avant-garde saxophone on the former and creepy plucked strings closing out the latter. Reeking Tunnels is also of note with its raunchy noise rock approach, similar in vein to the last Puron album. This is also the only track I might describe as fun. I will say that the two pure noise tracks on here feel like a bit of a throwaway as opposed to something that actually adds to the overall experience. If you want to hear what I consider to be a much better implementation, check out Dendritic Arbor's Romantic Love. But overall, I'd say that Garden of Burning Apparition is better than Weeping Choir, although it's still no trumpeting ecstasy. Next up, we have Sunless with Ylem via Willowtip Records. Sunless is a Minneapolis dissonant technical death metal trio I'd recommend to fans of Gorguts, Ulcerate, and Artificial Brain. As such, this is not going to be something that appeals to your average everyday metal listener. Ylem is an unrelenting assault on the senses in the form of bludgeoning blast beats and contorted, often atonal guitars. Riffs start and stop like rusted jammed machinery alongside blackened death snarls like plumes of choking black smoke. I can almost smell the dripping oil, gas, and that unmistakable hint of impending electrical fire in the air. Less music and more a steady unraveling of the self. Only press play on this one if you've already committed to the more dissonant and avant-garde side of the genre. Next up is Cradle of Filth with Existence is Futile via Nuclear Blast Records. With their 13th album, Cradle continue on with what I consider to be a true renaissance since Hammer of the Witches. The band has come a long way over the years, and with what may be their strongest lineup to date, they continue to craft increasingly more impressive compositions with both killer riffs and melodramatic atmosphere. Lots of great tracks to choose from here with the likes of Necromantic Fantasies, Existential Terror, and How Many Tears to Nurture a Rose. But really, I feel like this album stands best as a complete work. I wouldn't say it's as good as Hammer of the Witches or Cryptoriana, but it's still one that belongs in the upper tiers of their discography. Check out my full album review and discography tier list for more thoughts. Then probably my most underground pick this month is Lou Kelly with Shriek. Lou Kelly is a solo artist I've previously covered in his very Mike Patton-esque madness on albums like Junk City and the Vulgarian Philharmonic. This album mashes those two styles together, combining the brassy bleats of jazzman instrumentation and tribal drumming with more chaotic, nonsensical guest vocals. Wild stuff for fans of more experimental projects like Patton and Lombardo's Phantomus. In any case, it's 14 tracks of pure, concentrated weirdness over just 28 minutes. I had been on the lookout for something on the more unique side this year, like Igor or Psy, and Shriek most definitely scratched that itch. Then we have Frontierer with Oxidized. Frontier is an extremely chaotic band based out of Scotland and recommended for fans of Car Bomb. Yes, these guys go heavy on the gent sound, but this is not your daddy's Periphery or Architects album. This is gent for the truly unhinged, mixing in plenty of chaotic blasts of laser beam sounds and mathcore noodling. This isn't an album, it's a gauntlet. As one of our regulars on the Discord put it, it's Headache the Band. And I know that he meant this in a negative way, but I can't think of a more perfectly accurate tagline to appeal to someone like myself. Also guest spots from Ion Dissonance and Will Haven, favorite tracks Corrosive Wash, Southern Hemorrhage, and Day Dark. And then there's Ghost Bath with Self-Loather via Nuclear Blast Records. Previously known for post-black tunes in the vein of Death Heaven and Self-Loather finds this previously memeable band taking a serious turn into the more overtly black metal side of their sound. Right from the top, Convince Me to Bleed bears little resemblance to any of their previous material, sounding much more like something I'd expect from an Abigail Williams record. Grim black metal rasps are met with ominous tremolo lines for a seriously dark and menacing effect. And other tracks similarly barrel forwards into this same misery with Hide from the Sun's discomforting, ugly cries of some unseen woman in despair. Lots of truly stunning piano too. The atmosphere is still here, but this is a far cry from the often triumphant sounding melodies of 2017's Star Mourner. A strong recommendation from me on this one. Next, of course, we had to include Metalcore with Coherence via Napalm Records. Metalcore is a melodic and progressive death metal band from Australia who have consistently been dropping modern classics in the genre. Aside from the always stellar riffing and songwriting, the band also stand out from the pack with their characteristic phlegmy growls, more on par with the likes of Skeleton Witch. True to expectations, lead singles like Hidden Window and Foothold deliver with incredibly infectious hooks that are equal parts Opeth and Dark Tranquility. The instrumental Sweep of Days actually sounds like it would have been right at home on My Arms Your Hearse or Blackwater Park. But then you also have the longer cuts like the nearly 11-minute Locust and 12+ minute closer Much More Was Lost, taking you on an even more dynamic journey with plenty of twists and turns along the way. Another triumph for a great modern band. Next is Knocked Loose with A Tear in the Fabric of Life. So as if we didn't have enough to cover this month already, the Kentucky metallic hardcore darlings just had to ninja drop this new EP, complete with super creepy animated film. I was getting a lot of Tool vibes from the latter, but sonically this EP doubles down on the increased heaviness of A Different Shade of Blue, which is still one of my favorite albums to re-listen to from 2019. Brian's trademark wails sound as wild and desperate as ever, and while it doesn't get nearly as experimental as Code Orange, there are definitely connections to be drawn between the two bands' heaviest riffs and super dark oppressive atmosphere. If you still somehow manage to avoid the Knocked Loose bandwagon, this is as good a release as any to start with. Alright, another underdog pick here with Deviant Process and Nurture via Season of Mist. Deviant Process is a Quebec City technical and progressive death metal band I'd recommend to fans of Obscura, Beyond Creation, and again, Gorguts. Violent snarls collide with blasts of distortion in a veritable cyclone of chaotic musicianship. Yet it all comes together perfectly thanks to both impressive dynamic songwriting and admirable focus on teamwork. Seriously, the way in which these guys play off of one another on these songs is nothing short of awe-inspiring. The term well-oiled machine gets thrown around a lot, sometimes even on my own channel, but it absolutely applies when it comes to Deviant Process. The guitars, the bass, the drumming, all in perfect and dizzying harmony. And the more I listened to it, the more I loved every single track. It just keeps getting better and better. One of my favorites this month for sure. Alright, Every Time I Die with Radical via Epitaph Records. But if it gets too close, I gotta kill it all. I have been waiting for this album probably more so than any other this year, and I didn't even realize that after the delays, it's been 5 years already now since Low Teens. And I am so happy right now. I have no qualms with calling this one of Every Time I Die's best albums to date. Just be forewarned that it's also likely their darkest and most nihilistic. The space between us is like a crime scene. No blood enough fingerprints. No blood enough This is 16 tracks of Keith just spitting pure bile regarding what basically boils down to hatred of the human race. Even going so far as to say just give the world back to the animals. And while I can't quite relate to such a bleak outlook, it comes across as 100% genuine and rarely fails to entertain in the process. Once again, check out my full review for more thoughts and also the tier list for my thoughts on the entire Every Time I Die discography. And then as if that wasn't enough, we also have Archspire with Bleed the Future via Season of Mist. So I've got to say, not only did this month slay in general, it just kept getting better and better. Every time I thought I'd heard the best album of the month, the next one would top it. And such is the case with Bleed the Future. Simply put, this album slaps. From Ollie's trademark machine gun vocals and the battering technical snare strikes to the riveting guitar hooks and killer bass moments, everything that I loved about Relentless Mutation is once more on full display and arguably done even better. And to those who still hate on this vocal style, I just don't get you. Between the impressive level of skill involved to how it helps Archspire not just sound like every other tech band right now, I see nothing but benefits here. Favorite tracks: Golden Mouth of Ruin, Abandon the Linear, Bleed the Future, and Drain of Incarnation. But once more, sticking to a wise runtime of just over 30 minutes, there's really not a second that I don't enjoy. And then almost shockingly, we have Dream Theater with A View from the Top of the World. This is another album I did not expect to make my favorites list, given that just over a month ago I had somehow avoided ever listening to a single Dream Theater album. But after finally taking the dive into their discography, I feel confident in saying that this 15th album is one of their best in their 30 years of existence. The songwriting is tighter, the orchestration feels massive, and of course the performances are top-notch as always. And continuing to pull together influences from everything from Rush to Pantera, A View from the Top of the World is also a highly dynamic listen that seems to cover the entire scope of their career. Answering the Call with its energetic pace changes calls back to the classic song Panic Attack. Invisible Monsters goes for the more Broadway musical sound of The Astonishing. Awaken the Master gets crazy heavy with some serious groove, and the 20+ minute closer stands tall alongside even their most ambitious arrangements. Furthermore, every member is still firing on all cylinders, both as a unit and during their many solos across the album's duration. There are albums on this list that I enjoy more, but I feel like objectively, performance-wise, this may just be the best metal album of the month. Y'all let me know down in the comments what were your favorite metal albums this month, and check out my full reviews of these albums and also tier lists. I also have one for Dream Theater. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.